Started. I'll start with introductions. I'm Pat Malone, Benton County Commissioner.
Zan Ojiro, Commissioner.
Joe Kirby, County Administrator.
And
Danielle Brown, Health Department.
all right, thanks Danielle.
Teresa Farley, Board of Commissioners.
Charlie Fountain, Health Department. John Sarda, Member of the Public.
Morning. Okay. I see Mike Johnson.
Hello, I'm here. Mike Johnson, Benton County Public Works.
Morning, Mike. All right. And Douglas McLaughlin. Good morning, Douglas. And I think that's everybody.
Commissioner Malone, can you check and see if Brian Lee is on the line? I didn't hear Brian.
Brian Lee, are you on board? I think he's caller 02, but if that's you, Brian, we're not hearing anything. But we will assume you're with us, and we'll find out here in a few minutes. Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none, move on to item 3. Review and approve our agenda. There's one addition under work session. We're adding 5.2, a policy discussion on President Trump's executive order exempting or deferring FICA taxes. And any other additions or corrections? All right. So go ahead and make a motion to approve.
I would move approval of the agenda as amended.
And I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, item 4, chair decisions. There have been none in the last week. So we are on to item 5, update from the EOC. And we usually start out with Brian Lee. Are you there, Brian?
Commissioner, I do have staff reaching out to Brian to see if he's available. We can go ahead and move on with Charlie and Danielle if you'd like.
Okay, we will save Brian for later. Why don't you start us off, Charlie?
Hey, thank you, Commissioner. Mine will be very brief. Danielle can talk about transition from EOC to DOC. Case investigation continues. We continue to have sort of our slow pace, but continuing pace of new cases. Right now, as of yesterday, 166 cases with another 20 presumptive. Fortunately, no new fatalities, so holding at 6. Significantly for the communicable disease team, all 5 emergency hire positions have now been placed. We're starting a staggered orientation couple of people started yesterday, 3 more starting on Monday. So onboarding has started with those folks. In addition, 2 new, and those are full-time positions who will be full case investigators, not just contact tracers. So they're the full meal deal. And those are 6-month emergency hires. Thank you, Joe, for that. Really provides some stability to that team in the long run and some welcome relief to the core team that's really been pulling heavy weight for several months. It'll take a little bit of time to get people fully up to speed and operating completely independently, but it will be, with this longer term longevity of those positions, it will be time well spent and really prepare us well for whatever happens in the fall and winter, and like I say, provide some relief once people are up to speed, have worked through their mentorship and are operating independently. And then the 2 OSU interns, again, full-time paid internships out of public health COVID funding, doing contact tracing, a bunch of data entry, as well as a bunch of team background work. So very important added capacity there. Those 2 interns will begin work on September 1st. Also, everyone is probably aware that Tammy Shandy, after several decades of work with the county, was retiring at the end of August.
I didn't know that.
But at the current time, both Tammy and Paula Felipe are doing a significant amount of the COVID data entry on all of the lab tests. We receive all of the positive and negative lab tests. Those all have to be hand entered into the state data system. Unfortunately, there's not an adequate level of connectivity between the lab reporting system and the disease tracking system to auto-populate everything. So it's a tremendous amount of work each day with hundreds of tests coming in. Paula and Tammy have been picking up the lion's share of that critical work to free up the rest of the team for actually doing case investigation and contact tracing. With Tammy's retirement, I have used our new case rate revenue for COVID cases to do an emergency hire of Tammy to continue to do that data entry, so we don't lose her experience and capacity, and don't have to backfill that elsewhere in the department. So again, we're getting a little over $1,100 per case as case rate billing on an ongoing basis, at least through the end of that. Money is guaranteed through the end of December. There's no word yet if additional federal money will be coming down to sustain that. Again, a lot of this is dependent on the congressional funding work that's in the headlines every day. So, but at least through December, we do have that. We have instituted a process. We're doing our first billing right now. It's being processed all the way back to March to our first positive case. So we'll get a significant windfall of money for that, and then be doing that ongoing billing on a monthly basis through the end of the year. So I think that's it from my side, unless people have questions.
I don't see any questions, and glad you got a couple days off at the end of last week, or I assume you were getting a little time off.
I did, thank you very much.
All right. Why don't you continue with the report, Danielle?
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. So as Charlie talked, we did move completely from the County Emergency Operations Center to the Health Department Operations Center effective yesterday. We did a quick orientation with all of our branch leaders and section chiefs and got everybody lined out for the ongoing DOC response and structure, moving that forward. So that is completely in place and functional as of yesterday. Quick update on a couple of things that we've been working on. The K through 12 school plans, we went through those. The school reopening plan team has went through those. They were due to the state this week, so we've been working closely with the schools to make sure that those get completed. The Vulnerable Populations Group led by Rocio Munoz and Sarah Hartstein have completed the mask and face covering distribution to the community-based organizations that we had been working with. Sarah can give specific numbers, but I think we distributed something around 30,000 KN95 masks to a variety of community-based organizations. We also distributed a fair amount of hand sanitizer and have some more available for folks that need that. Sarah and her team are working on our updated FEMA requests for the non-congregate housing funding for the reimbursement for those services that we're providing. Those are 30-day update or 30-day renewals, so we've continued to do those since May. Sarah has stayed on top of getting those done every 30 days, so I can't thank Sarah enough for the work that she's been doing to track all of that and make sure that those are done in a timely manner so we can continue to be approved for the FEMA requests. Connected to that, the RV car camping that we have had at the fairgrounds for the homeless individuals who have vehicles that need a safe and secure location to camp through the COVID emergency has been going extraordinarily well. All the work we did to set up the structure and process for approval has proven to be very, very useful and very helpful. We've kept those 10 slots that Lynn McKee had made available for us full since we initiated the program. She's actually opened one more slot for us, so we have 11 now. So we've been able to keep that open and functional since we started that in May. Melissa Ryle, who was one of our behavioral health case managers, is helping to manage that, and it's been working very, very well with a lot of support from Corvallis Housing First and the harm reduction team. So thank you to everyone that's been involved in that. The last thing that the DOC is focused on is staying in contact with the City of Corvallis Economic Development Program and the homeless program with Paul Bellotta and Kate Portia, so we can continue to coordinate shared resources and shared work around the economic recovery and the supporting of the homeless individuals in Benton County. Julia Arena has continued to host the monthly provider calls, and that's very, very useful in continuing those dialogues and conversations as well. So I will stop there and pause for any questions.
Sounds like things are proceeding and working out well. I'm glad to hear about the fairgrounds being utilized. Those folks are kind of changed their whole operation and trying to figure out what, okay, we used to do fairs and events and how can we best utilize the space that we have. So that's glad to hear that that is working well.
Yes. Yeah, Lynn McKee has just been fantastic to work with. Lynn and all of her staff and her camp hosts have been amazing and very welcoming for the individuals that we're placing out there, which is making a world of difference.
Great.
Commissioner Malone, Brian Lee is available next.
Okay. Is anything else for us, Danielle?
The only other thing I will add is George Looney has agreed to continue to do the finance report outs for commissioners during the weekly call. Because we're switching from the EOC to the DOC this week, we don't have any financial updates, but we will have those again starting next week. I see George came on, so I hope I'm not stepping on his toes and giving any information that he was not ready for.
Okay, Zan?
I do have a question about finances, and that I do recall that George was saying that they would be handled differently moving forward. But I believe I asked last week about our burn rate for the CARES Act funds and whether or not we were projecting that we would go burn through all of the money that was allotted for us from the state prior to December 31st or not. I'm curious about that because of the push by the Association of Oregon Counties to change the whole approach that the state is taking to allocating CARES Act to counties, and wanting to know whether or not we are at all concerned about running out of funds to handle the COVID emergency at this time.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Commissioner Ojero. I would defer to Mary Otley to answer that question. I know that she has been working on managing those funds, and they're also waiting for some audits from other counties to come back. But that's really the extent of my knowledge and my comfortability in answering that question.
Mary Otley will be joining us momentarily for another topic, and we can pose that question to her.
Super, thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else for Danielle, Sarah Hartstein, your name was mentioned. Do you have any update you would like to put in at this time?
Good morning. I do not. Danielle covered it really well. Thank you.
Great, appreciate your efforts, and we see that Brian Lee has joined us, so why don't you give us your report, Brian?
Good morning, folks. So my main report, EOC and emergency management wise, is the face covering distribution. We are doing that this coming Saturday, August 22nd from 9 to 12. We do have technically 10 sites that we're going to be distributing out of. And then there's a lot of folks who can't make it to this Saturday's event. So we're going to get some provisions together so they can still pick up face coverings after the event in case there's just families and community members that need masks, or I'm sorry, face coverings still. The other thing I want to highlight is the Crowd Sewing Brigade. At this point has produced 45,000 cloth face coverings and got those out to community members.
Wow.
So they're going to be kind of highlighted and touched on, I want to say, in an article. So just a big effort on there. And then that was 100% volunteer effort. We bought them about 10 grand worth of cloth and materials, but they have done most of it, and a lot of folks donated fabric and cloth materials for them to produce those. So it's a huge effort. Really great to see what the community can do and put together during these times of need. The other thing about the face covering side, again, this is going to be geared towards just the general population. Public health has given out, as Sarah and Danielle mentioned, about 30,000 face coverings to sort of the vulnerable targeted population. So this is just the other community members at large. The other thing that we are going to get more information on hopefully soon from the state is that schools are going to receive PPE from the Department of Education. I don't know what that looks like. The trail has gone cold on it. They mentioned it a couple weeks back, and now there's nothing being said about it. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but they are expecting to get PPE from ODE. And I don't know the timelines of what that's actually going to look like in the end, but schools are going to get it. And then my understanding is there's an effort to get preschools, kindergartens, and daycares PPE as well. I just don't know, again, what the mechanism will look like and what that's going to look like in terms of the timeline. I'm guessing they're going to ask us to help with that, which we are more than willing to do, but hopefully they can communicate with us about what sort of timeline they have and who it's supposed to go to. So more to come on that. Just kind of want to keep you folks in the loop. Other than that,
Brian, when you say the state folks want us to help. Is that with distribution, or, and they're supplying the PPE? Is that, do I have that correct?
Yes, odds are, they haven't said, but my guess is what's going to happen is ODE is going to give the counties PPE and say that they need to go to the different districts within our county, which again isn't the end of the world, but hopefully they can coordinate that really well so we're not just handed this and have to do it in a scramble. The other idea is that they'll distribute to each district, but I have a feeling that that's not going to happen and they're going to ask us to. So just more of a heads up on our end to you folks that could be a sudden big push that could come down from the state, and we'll have to meet that need and kind of mobilize some logistical support on. Last thing related to sort of funding, we got supplemental funds through the Emergency Management Performance Grant. It's about $17,800, and we are going to put in for, right now, there's actually going to be a call here in 30 minutes about what it for sure can cover, but as far as we understand, it could cover something like an EOC, a mobile EOC command tent or trailer that we could use for an alternate care site, as a shelter, as et cetera, if needed. So I think that's what we're going to apply for. The other idea would be some sort of public health mobile testing trailer. So we're going to explore those options here in about 30 minutes, but right now I have it penciled for the kind of an EOC command tent. So it'd basically be a pop-up tent that we could put somewhere in a parking lot, and we'd have to supply generators and heaters and things like that, but it would be a huge step towards getting a mobile shelter, a mobile EOC set up if needed. We also got, I forgot to mention in one of our calls, through the Hospital Preparedness Program, Healthcare Coalition grant, Emergency Management got a grant for mass care and sheltering supplies. So those are ADA compliant cots primarily, as well as like blankets and hygiene kits and a trailer to store it all in. It is a regional asset between the 6 counties and the state, but obviously here in our county, so if we need it, we sort of have first dibs on it, and then if someone else needs it and we don't, we can provide it out. So just increasing our capabilities as much as possible through grant funding. And that's all I had in the report.
Great. Any questions for Brian? Well, keep us posted. Obviously lots going on, and quite a few things that need to be firmed up, but I'm glad you're on top of things, Brian.
Of course, thank you.
Commissioner Malone, you could check in with Lilia to see if she has a JIC update. We don't specifically have her on the agenda, but I do know she's on the line.
Okay, I know, noticed Lilia Neville is with us. Do you have an update for us?
Sure, Commissioner, I'd be happy to provide an update. It's really mainly a follow-up on what Brian was talking about. This Saturday, we have our mass distribution event. Alyssa is point on this event. She's really been leading the public engagement on it. And in fact, because I will be out of town this weekend, likely with limited cell service, Alyssa will be working the event on Saturday, and will be the point of contact for all the volunteers at all 10 of the sites. So any more information about that, I would defer to Alyssa to provide for the briefing. And then the other priority for this week that we've been focusing on is preparing for activating our Team A next Monday. This is going to be the first time that the JIC rotates, so I'm sure that we'll have some growing pains as we move into this first transition. But I'm really looking forward to starting with that team activating next week. We had 2 onboarding sessions with those individuals in the last week, and they went great. Folks were really engaged and excited about the work, actually. Yep, those would be my 2 primary updates.
Any questions or comments for Lilia? Alyssa, did you want to add anything to the, oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Forget.
So the JIC will be supporting the massive distribution. There will be 9 there will be 9 distribution events happening throughout the county on Saturday. One will be a walk-up site at the farmer's market. The rest are drive-through sites. And then the city of Monroe will be hosting a walk-up distribution event next week during business hours at the city hall. So it's quite a heavy lift. There's going to be a lot of sites. We'll be having a briefing with all of the site coordinators who are coordinating just a ton of volunteers. It's amazing how many partner organizations we have in this. And we'll be having a briefing with them to go over protocols, expectations, and what we can anticipate for the event. So I'm really excited. I think this is going to go well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to getting a report next week on
Absolutely.
how it went. Zan?
Me too.
I have just one follow-up question about the discussion we had previously about some limited trend data that we might put up on our website, and wondering what the state of those discussions was at this time.
So Peter and I had a meeting scheduled for last Thursday, and unfortunately some priorities shifted on his side of the house, and he wasn't able to make the meeting. So I actually have been emailing with him back and forth this morning about rescheduling that, and hopefully trying to bring something to the board during my update next week, or whenever I'm scheduled to have a little bit longer time with you. So hopefully sooner rather than later, Commissioner. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Not for me.
Thanks, Lilia. I see
Absolutely.
George Looney, his name was mentioned earlier about a transition, and see that George is with us. Do you have an update for us, George?
I do have an update, and I apologize. It was supposed to be a meeting with Mary at 9, but she moved it back, so Danielle was covering for me. We transitioned from the EOC to the DOC. There was discussion over the last week about who would be continuing the financials, and I know Danielle, I think she put it very, very nicely when she said she talked to all the interested parties and many uninterested parties, but it kind of fell back that I will continue to provide you the financial reporting. Unfortunately, I just found that out yesterday afternoon, so I don't have a report for you for this last week, but I will catch up next week, and I think we will be kind of refocusing what we're looking at. Because of this being a DOC, it will be focused on the county expenses and less so on the city expenses. The expenses that they're running really certainly are very important, but they especially tend to be around their fire, and I'm not sure that that's really the information that's as relevant to you as you'd like to see. So I anticipate probably, and I haven't mentioned this to Danielle yet, but to get me together with her in the next day or two to kind of focus on, to figure out how we want to report information to you, and I will have something to you for next week as well. But I do think Mary, I know, has joined as well, and I think she can address Commissioner Ogero's question about the CARES Act better than I could.
Well, George, I appreciate your flexibility of moving as the effort moves from countywide to concentrating on the health department, and look for. I appreciate the continuity of your reports. So, thank you.
I appreciate it, and I apologize for missing the one this week, but we'll get you caught up next week.
It's a deal, George.
Okay.
Mary, did you want to weigh in on Zan's question?
Yeah, I got a quick email from Joe, so can I hear the question in its
Sure.
entirety, please?
My question is what our burn rate is for that state allocation of CARES Act dollars to Benton County. and whether we're projecting that we will burn through it all by December 31st or earlier, just in terms of regular COVID response, and how much flexibility we might have within that funding stream for some other kinds of response that are not public health oriented. I've just been hearing differing stories from different counties about how that's going for them, and I was not clear for us whether those funds were sufficient.
Okay, I'll go with it, it depends. So there's three or four counties that I know of, probably some cities and service districts as well, are being audited right now by the state as to what they ask for reimbursement for. So we're kind of waiting to see how that pans out to make sure, because we asked for reimbursement much like the other counties did for the payroll costs that were deferred. I mean, we had them in our budget, but they were working on the event, and so we asked to be reimbursed for those. And so that caused us to burn through the money fairly quickly, because we probably asked for $1 million in payroll costs that were not overtime costs. They were just regular operating costs that we already had in our budget. However, the people were diverted. So I think that's one of the highlights of what they're auditing right now. So as soon as we get the results of the other counties' audits, we'll know better if what we did is okay, or if we have to pay it back or use it in some other fashion. But that said as well and you want to see this, we have all these funds going into one cost center. So right now that cost center, because the payroll costs are not there, that cost center has probably got a balance of $1 million or so right now, because we haven't put the payroll revenue back to the departments. We're just leaving in that cost center to be used for COVID-related events. So we asked for $700,000 for a 45-day period here just recently. So that was as of June 30th. The next ask will be for the period July 1 through some day in March, which is really weird. We thought it was going to be a monthly ask, but it's really not. It's some random, like March 11th or something. So there's some random date that they say that's what you're supposed to do. So we had 3 points. I don't think we will run through it. I mean, unless we ramp up again by reimbursing ourselves for our payroll costs. So I think we're good that way. However, we also have this extra money that we should be doing something as well, diverting it back around. So, sort of reusing it, that said, if we can. So I think we could easily, if we continue to reimburse ourselves for payroll costs, we could go through those costs fairly quickly. And we haven't really discussed with Danielle and Charlie about who's paying for the DOC. Is that because they have a lot of funding themselves? They're getting funding on a case-by-case basis. So we need to start parsing out costs of going forward where it's not an EOC and it's a DOC, and probably stand up either another project or another cost center. We haven't, again, I think George has left the meeting, but we need to have a conversation about that, is how we're separating the funds. So kind of a long-winded, didn't really answer your question, but I think there's funds available for other uses as soon as we know what those audits do.
That sounds good. I know that there's a lot of heat at the county level between the counties and the governor's office and the emergency board about the use of these CARES Act funds and how they're being distributed. And I just wanted to make sure that we felt that we were getting enough funds to compensate for all of the extra effort we're putting in, and that we did have some funds for some of those other support activities like economic recovery and so forth. And it appears that we do, but it sounds like it's muddy at the moment.
Correct. And a smaller group, Danielle, Lilia, myself, Debbie Parsons, and Sandy Smith, we met couple weeks ago, Danielle, I think, to talk about, what to do with any excess funds. And one of the things that we really would like you to consider is if we decide to disperse money to the community, that the county is not the one doing it, that again, we'll use a third party to help us administer that because, as you know, people are a little bit run ragged, and to have to make those kind of decisions is not very functional. So our recommendation when we come back to you would be to work with one or two third parties to help us disperse the money.
I think that's an excellent idea. I think that's worked effectively so far in the collaboration with the Benton Community Foundation and certainly on other topics such as childcare in the community. United Way has stepped up to be that lead in collaboration again with Benton Community Foundation. So I think there are lots of opportunities to do things well and do them right.
Commissioners, Mary, let me just provide some quick additional information for the commissioners and yourself. I did have a meeting with Mark Shepard, Corvallis City Manager, last week. We talked a little bit about the CARES funds available to both the city and the county. We've both agreed to wait and see what happens with the results of the audits that you're mentioning. And once we determine how much money we believe we still may have access to and have not targeted a use for it, that he and I and you and Nancy Brewer would sit down and identify if there are any projects that the city and the county would like to fund together. And so just putting that on the board's radar, that Mark Shepard and I have had that dialogue to follow up hopefully in a couple of weeks to see if there's any partnership that would make sense in terms of how we could spend our respective funds.
All right. Mary, is there a timeline on the audit?
They had to have all their information into the state last Friday, so I'm assuming, and that was a fairly quick turnaround. I think they gave them a little less than 2 weeks to respond to the request for the audit, and so I'm hoping that they'll turn around the results of the audit in that time frame as well. So I'm hoping by the end of the month we'll know.
Thank you. Any other questions for our EOC folks or DOC?
Nothing but a thank you. Appreciate everything you all are doing and the smooth transition from EOC to DOC. I'm hoping that we can keep it at as a DOC, but we'll see as the fall progresses.
Okay. Our 5.2, and this, I think you lead this discussion, Mary, is discussion of President Trump's executive order deferring FICA taxes from, I believe, September 1st to December 31st.
All right. Thank you, commissioners, for letting me get this on the agenda fairly quickly, because depending on your decision, we have some really fast turnaround to do. But as you probably are aware, the president signed an executive order deferring the employee share of FICA, which is 6.2% of FICA for September 1 through December 31. And it's a deferral at this point. And that means that at some point that will have to be paid back. There's no guidance from the IRS or the federal government or anyone on how this payback would happen, but logic would tell you it's either going to be in the form of an income tax, it'll show up on your income tax form as additional tax to pay it back, or it will be a reduction or an additional FICA going forward after December 31. This deferral is voluntary or optional. The employer gets to make the choice, not the employee. And I'm coming here to ask you if we as an employer can say, no, we're not going to participate at this point in time. If it becomes permanent, we can go back and correct all the additional money and refund it to the employees that that worked for us during that period of time. I have real concerns about deferring it and then having some employee leave, and then we have no way to get the money back. So it's just very messy, and there's no guidance, and I know a lot of pressure is being put on the IRS right now to come up with some guidance in the next less than 2 weeks. So that's, do you have any questions about what I'm talking about?
Well, I've followed this issue as part of the next round. I've forgotten the acronyms that the House,
Heroes.
the HEROES Act that has gone nowhere in over 2 months since the House passed it. Congress was not interested in this proposal, and I think this was a bipartisan, weren't interested in this approach. And with lack of clarity, seems like we have enough muddy financial issues going on currently without taking up another one. But do you have any thoughts, Zan?
I would concur with the staff perspective that we'd be better off not deferring the employee share of the FICA taxes at this time, because it will likely be quite messy. And if it does become permanent, we can always do some sort of a lump sum to employees at that December 31st date or moving forward. But to stand up a system between payroll and HR without IRS guidance on a 2-week time frame seems like a recipe for disaster. So, and personally, I have to also throw in my political sentiments, echoing Commissioner Malone. I think that this is an attempt in many ways to just undermine our Medicare and Social Security systems, and I am not in favor of that approach.
Commissioners, I did ask Tracy Martineau, our HR director, to join us. She is on the line now, and she has been keeping a pulse on the HR listservs, and so I asked her to also share what she was hearing and thinking.
Okay. Do you have some comments for us, Tracy?
I think it will probably just reinforce your own thinking. There have been several HR directors from Columbia, the Dalles, and I think it was Douglas that weighed in, that indicated that their organizations were going to take a pass on this one for the same reasons that it sounds like you've been talking about.
Okay. My favorite part of the president's selling of this was it's a deferral, but if you reelect me, I will take care of it for you. So enough said. And what I've seen from kind of nationwide response is just what you folks are saying. There isn't enough clarity. This is an obligation that you're postponing, and just especially with Congress not interested in this, I think it doesn't make any sense for us to weigh in, but I appreciate you checking with other similar organizations, how they're approaching this, and so I'm assuming you would like some clarity what the board wants you to do. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we'd like some direction that you, how we should proceed.
Well, I'd be happy to put forth a motion that we choose at this time to not participate in the FICA tax deferral from September through December 31st of 2020.
And I would second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, so we are deferring the deferral, I think is how I would put it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for raising this, and I knew it was in the works, but it hadn't quite connected. I didn't know the September 1st start date, so thank you for getting this, so we're paying attention, so.
Well, I held off thinking Congress would do something, but that didn't happen, so.
That's a good one, Mary.
Optimist.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On that note, we're to item 6, the consent calendar,
I would move approval of the consent calendar.
and I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Consent calendar passes. Now we're on to new business, and this looks like a Public Works extravaganza. And Mike Johnson, are you in charge of the weight limits on eight county bridges?
Yeah, I guess that would be me. So I guess with the exception of the Airport Avenue Bridge, which has a critical finding of the decayed piles, the rest are a result of ODOT updating all the load ratings for all of our bridges. So yeah, the other 7 were scheduled updates of load ratings. It's just the restrictions are because of under design of the bridge members, which is pretty normal for bridges that are 60 plus years old. Certainly condition is a concern in some cases, and we're looking at repairs, especially of course on the Airport Avenue Bridge. But yeah, I mean, some we're just going to have to live with. It looks like.
So are you, is that the end of the report? And shall we just go through and proceed forward?
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure if you want me to go through each bridge individually, or if we have specific items to address in general, or.
I have a couple of questions, but
Sure.
I guess just to clarify for myself, you said that the majority of these bridges, with the exception of Airport Avenue, they're scheduled updating just based on the design, original design of these bridges because of their age.
Right, because the most recent load ratings they did were 30 years ago, so they like to update it every time they changed whenever they changed the load rating method a few years back. So they're going through and redoing all of the load ratings for all the bridges in the state.
Okay, and so we can expect to see another batch of these load rating updates for other bridges in the county moving forward as this rolls out?
Unfortunately, yeah. I know of 3 more that are coming, that are imminent. They were supposed to send out at the end of June, but they haven't sent them to me yet. But yeah, they're going through all of the bridges. So.
Okay, and then the Airport Avenue Bridge is an exceptional case because there is actually some rot in the substructure?
Yes, we have decayed piles. It looks like at least 6 that need repair or replacement. The good thing about that restriction, it's a 20-ton restriction, and the road in that area is already restricted to 12 tons. But we still need to look at repairing the bridge because, of course, the decay will only get worse. So,
Yep.
That bridge unfortunately has about, I think, 54 timber piles to it. So once we start having to replace them, it might turn into chasing chasing a whole big mess, but so.
It sounds like that's the next big bridge replacement project after we finish.
It will definitely be looked at as,
Okay.
as one of our candidates, yeah.
Okay, so yes, and I'm glad to hear that that won't have a significant effect, given the fact that the road already has a 12-ton weight limit. So, but that, again, plays into all of our updated transportation system planning and which one of those east-west roads is the primary freight route and all of those questions. So I'm hoping that we can get a bigger picture discussion of some of those questions at some point before us, rather than just seeing this emergency kind of action, although I know that this is just a routine thing at this time. My other question is about signage and the fact that some of the signs just have a weight limit, some of the signs have a weight limit and number of axles aspect to them. Some of them are just in terms of axles. Why is there such a range of different signage types instead of just one approach?
It's due to just a different number of modern design vehicles that we have to design bridges for. There's just so many big heavy-duty trucks these days. These vehicles with the number of axles that you're referencing, those restrictions are just for the single unit vehicles, the specialty hauling vehicles, the big, huge dump trucks with 6 or 7 axles that can carry. They carry huge loads. So we really have to pay special attention to those on our old bridges.
Yeah.
Yes, I would imagine. Yeah, it's just the signage itself that I find a little bit confusing because each one has a different,
It's very confusing.
different tonnage numbers and different graphics. So if I were a truck driver, I would think it would be kind of confusing to figure out what the best routes were. But
Right, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, I do get calls from truck drivers, and a lot of them don't have any idea what the signs mean. We go by what ODOT, how ODOT recommends to make the signs, and that's kind of the best way to approach it, I think.
is there any kind of an ODOT map statewide digitally that provides clarity about routes for vehicles?
They have a variety of maps. It's kind of a process to learn how to navigate their different maps and the different types of restrictions. So that's why they have a whole, division dedicated to those type of things.
Okay, I see.
Office. So.
I see Alyssa Rash shaking her head yes, coming to us from ODOT in her communications role. She's quite familiar with all of that. Okay, well,
Right.
if the signage is ODOT level dictate, I guess that, there's nothing we can do. If I were an occasional driver driving our roads, I think I would be perplexed.
Michael,
Right,
Joe Kirby, a question for you and/or Laurel regarding the signage. It's my understanding that typically the signage is in concert with Manual Uniform Traffic Code, MUTCD. Is it when you say it's a standard from the state? Is that based on the MUTCD, which is a kind of a national standard?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Laurel, can you also address the larger issue regarding funding and replacement repairs, how this ties into our TSP and in turn to our capital improvement project listing for transportation projects?
No, she was at an appointment and trying to call in, so she may not be able to talk
Gotcha.
at the moment.
Michael, are you part of that larger process in conjunction with Laurel?
Yeah, I'm learning the process. We're actually supposed to meet, I believe, this afternoon to talk about funding and replacement and grant applications. So I'm sure we could report back to you after that.
Commissioners, I'll arrange a future work session to show how the bridge maintenance and replacement needs tie into our overall TSP and how we go about funding these improvements and how they're placed into the CIP.
That would be great. Thank
Well,
you.
And it would be nice to have a discussion. I know Laurel has mentioned before about 6-axle dump trucks, and this was probably a year ago, I did not know there were 6-axle dump trucks, and I think I've seen up to 105,000 pound maximum limit on their gross weight, and
Right.
I'm sure our bridges did not have an inkling what was coming. And
No.
so back to Commissioner Ogero's comment about some clarity on, well, where do I get the information? And seems like online would be the preferred place, and with routes maybe marked out what's in some kind of colors, what the limits are. And so somebody with a heavy truck can plan out a route that way rather than wondering if what they're doing at that day is legal. And
Yes, we have a permit process for that, for the loads over 80,000 pounds. But unfortunately, there are those truckers that don't apply for permits and just go on their merry way. But there's not much we can do about those ones. But at least with the permit process, we can if they're requesting a route that has a weight restriction, we can revise their route, tell them to use a different route. So.
And is it just ODOT that has the portable scales that can check on specific routes?
Well, typically, yeah, unless you have a weighmaster, a county weighmaster to do that, but we do not.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to
I'm ready.
plow through? Mike, maybe as we go through, if there's any detail you'd like to add on a particular bridge, otherwise I can see kind of going quickly. We've had a little discussion on 7.1, the Airport Avenue bridge, so I think we've gone over that. I guess the question there is that project likely to be in the current year's operating budget?
I think replacing a few piles, I think it shouldn't be a huge project. That's something we could fit in, I believe. It's just, it's obviously depends on the road crew schedule and whatnot, but those are the types of projects that we like to squeeze in their lull time. So.
And is that something you have to do kind of low water time of year?
Yeah, definitely, especially on the Airport Avenue bridge. That one, the rotten piles are the ones that are right in the middle of the creek. So definitely we have to do those during the low water.
Okay, which would mean in the next
ASAP.
6 weeks, or okay.
Right.
Well, if there's no other questions or comments, let's get started. 7.1, Airport Avenue Bridge.
I move to adopt order number D 2020-064, authorizing the weight limit posting on Airport Avenue Bridge over Muddy Creek, County Bridge number 25280-35, effective July 24th, 2020.
I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Retroactive.
7.2, Bruce Road Bridge.
I am almost there. I move to adopt order D 2020-065 regarding the weight limit posting on Bruce Road Bridge over Muddy Creek, County Bridge number 35220-09.
Okay, I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Moving on to Dawson Road.
I should probably add on this bridge. This Dawson Road Bridge is the one that's right at the lumber mill. It doesn't look like the restriction shouldn't affect the log trucks or lumber trucks. It's just for the specialty hauling vehicles, the 5 and 6 axle dump trucks and 7 axle. However, it's definitely one we want to look at fixing and repairing before it gets too bad a shape.
That sounds like a
But
good
the
idea.
condition isn't actually that bad.
Okay. I move to adopt order number D 2020-066, authorizing the weight limit posting on Dawson Road Bridge over Oliver Creek, County Bridge number 45200-63.
Okay, I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 7.4, weight limit on Elliott Circle Bridge. Okay, and Mike, if you have any comments like you did on the last one.
Right. Sure. Yeah, I could add. This one is definitely one where the condition is starting to affect the load rate, the rating. So it's definitely one we're looking at repair. It also is a dead end road, so that bridge is the way in and out. So that's definitely one we're taking a close look at as well.
Okay,
That's, sounds like potential fire risk hazard if we don't address that one. I move to adopt order number D 2020-067, authorizing the weight limit posting on Elliott Circle Bridge over Small Creek, County Bridge number 15391-11.
I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 7.5, weight limit on McFarland Road Bridge.
There's not much spectacular about this rating. I mean, it's I believe due to overspanning of the girders, but
Okay. I move to adopt order number D 2020-068, authorizing the weight limit posting on McFarland Road Bridge over Muddy Creek, County Bridge number 45500-05.
I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 7.6, weight limit on Smith Loop Bridge.
yeah. Again, this one's just the issue with this one is design issue, and it's a loop. There's ways, alternate routes. So this one shouldn't be a significant restriction, terribly restrictive there.
Okay, I would move to adopt order number D 2020-069, authorizing the weight limit posting on the Smith Loop Bridge over a slough, County Bridge number 35260-07.
I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 7.7, imposing weight limit on Wiles Road Bridge.
Wiles Bridge, it is and has been on our replacement list for a while. I believe it was due, I don't know, in the next year or the year after. It did get moved back. It was scheduled for 2021, but it got moved back, I believe. But it's one that's on a replacement list.
Okay,
Okay. I move to adopt the order number D 2020-070, authorizing the weight limit posting on Wiles Road Bridge over Soap Creek, County Bridge number 05651-01.
I will second that. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 7.8, imposing weight limit on Williams Road Bridge.
Yeah, this one has substructure condition issues, and we will be looking at repair of the substructure.
All right.
I move to adopt order number D 2020-071, authorizing the weight limit posting on Williams Road Bridge over Hammer Creek, County Bridge number 46100-24.
I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Well, Michael, you've got a lot of work to do.
I do. Yes. Oh boy.
Well,
Well, thank you guys.
I look forward to hearing progress on bridges that need repair and/or replacement, and sounds like starting with the Airport Avenue Bridge. So,
Sounds good.
thank you for your report.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Now, my favorite part of the meeting, number 8, other. Do you have any other, Zan?
The only thing that I have to report is that I did have a conversation yesterday with the executive director of Lumina Hospice, Elizabeth Foster, and she has made a request for a small contribution from the county for support for their annual fundraiser to support hospice services and grief services throughout the county. So I will share that document, the letter she gave to me, or sent me, with everyone, and we can discuss it at a later date.
Okay. If you don't have anything else, I attended the monthly Fair Board meeting last night, and a general comment, I really appreciate, once again, staff's flexibility in figuring out, well, we used to do fairs, didn't happen this year. We've got a large facility and space, and how can we repurpose and help the county's efforts. And they've done a great job. We heard earlier about RV space that's been allotted, and probably the highlight from last night's meeting was the 4-H auction that takes place every year, I think at the end of the fair on Saturday night evening, and where 4-H kids have raised all kinds of animals, put a lot of work into their projects, and are kind of rewarded at the auction for their work. We didn't have fair this year, and so the auction committee and some other volunteers figured out how to do it online. You can't send pigs and cows around virtually, but you can do the bidding, and I think they raised over $400,000, which was slightly less than previous year, but considering the that this approach had never been done before, I think is a tremendous success, and I suggested that when they write a report on how the auction went, to send it to our communication folks to help the greater community know what's happened, and great great support. There was a discussion of the Pastega Light Show that's held every Christmas season at the fairgrounds. I think from the Pastega folks, well, maybe we'll take a year off. And from doing that, it's a lot of work to set up and take down. And there was, I think, pretty much universal agreement that we need to have this event this year. It may have more attendance than ever, because people are more than likely going to be limited in what kind of activities. Won't be as much flying around the country to visit friends and family. And so discussion with Rotary to see what kind of volunteer effort, but I really encourage that this event go on this year. I think more than likely we will need some cheering up and lights, and it's a perfect event for social distancing because you drive through it. And so stay tuned on that, but I think the county should do whatever encouraging we can to make sure that this takes place this year. As we speak, the solar building is getting some more walls. The inns were open, and I've been there at events in February, and it was a little chilly as the wind's going through about 25 miles an hour. So in walls are being put up, and with 20-foot wide doors, so it can still be part of the Pastega Light Show, be able to drive through it as needed, but the doors can come down to maybe even get a little heat in there. So that's part of the Fairgrounds Master Plan, and so that's taking place, and the kitchen remodel in the auditorium is underway. I think actually starting to tear out the old fixtures by the end of the month, so that's going well. There was discussion of food carts, and I think Mike Corwin mentioned in the Redmond area, very popular to have vendors, kind of like at the county fair, where different restaurants and vendors set up in one place. And again, the fairgrounds has space, so that's kind of early days of that discussion. Also, movie night. The Chamber of Commerce, in conjunction with OSU, we're going to have a drive-in movie, and because of no football, staff is being laid off, and so that event at Reeser is not going to take place. And so once again, Fairgrounds has space, and trying to figure out how to get partners that will help with the funding to make that go. So a lot going on at our fairgrounds, but I think that's probably all I have. Do you have anything for us, Joe?
Commissioners, I have nothing to add today. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't see or hear any other discussion.
Oh, the only other point is that I will be away next week. Just as a reminder, I will be returning on the 29th of August.
Okay. And so our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be a week from today, which I think is August 26th. So see most of you then. So, well, just a second here. I see something in the chat box. Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.